Hello friends, Tanya here with another 10 cards 1 kit video. This is for the June 2022 card kit of the month from Spellbinders. And buckle up baby, this is going to be a long one. For card number 1, we're going to take this yellow background and we're going to use the Precision Layering A2 die set. This happens to be B. And we're going to die cut a rectangle to go on our A2 card. I'm using one of the card bases from the kit. We'll adhere that directly to this panel. I am not adding any extra layers this time. And we'll center that nicely and we'll add a elliptical oval, the largest, second to largest oval from that set. And we're going to take the Fluted Classics ovals and we're going to use one of the simple oval dies. These don't fit perfectly, but close enough. We'll also take that simple oval die cut and emboss it with the Botanical Diamonds, which happens to be the embossing folder of the month for June. A little sneak peek there. That is an amazing folder. We love embossing folders. I know I do. And it's a great starter kit if you want to just try out the monthly kits. I'll have the links to the different clubs in the description box below if you're interested in any of those. We're going to take our ovals that we have layered up and put them just slightly to the right of the center of this card. And we're going to use some of the ephemera from the kit and the hat that I assembled on my unboxing video. I'll have that linked in the top corner here if I figure out how to use the cards on YouTube. And we are going to use a heavyweight block to help adhere those down. We're also going to use the word dies from the kit that I've die cut with the mirror gold cardstock that's included in the kit. I've actually used the white cardstock that came in the kit and the blue cardstock that came in the kit to create the hat, the party hat. I'm just carefully centering these letters the way I want them on the card front. It just says make a wish. And then we have these adorable ephemera that are going to go with this. Now you'll see that I just take the Barely Art precision glue and dab little dots behind the words. Sometimes if I think I have a little too much glue, I'll dab it off on the back of my hand. Again, using the heavyweight block, we're going to also add these adorable glasses that say B-Day Girl on them. And you can see that I added a little dimension behind those with a combination of cardstock and coaster blank. Coaster blank is simply pulp board, just like you get in the coasters at the bar or the restaurant that go under your drink. They just don't have any advertising on them, and I'll have a link to that in the description box below also. Here are the adorable die cut flowers from the kit. So I've used all of the die cuts from this kit on this card, and you can see me assemble those again on the unboxing video. I love the dimension that embossing folder adds. We're also going to pull in these gold sequins from the kit and add just a scattering of these on my card. I do use both sizes. I like to have one large one and two small ones in a grouping. To finish this card off, I take a sentiment from the stamp set that came in the kit that reads, "Wonderful people deserve wonderful birthdays." And I'm going to stamp that inside the card using a pigment ink and a stamp positioner. On card number 2, I'm going to use a patterned paper from the pack with the Precision Layering die set also and the Fluted Classic rectangles. I'm going to use the second to largest frame from the Fluted Classics and one of the inside simple rectangles and one of the precision layerings. And we're going to also add some spatter to this white piece of cardstock. I am using the Hero Arts Glimmer ink in gold, and I have it in this little palette. I'm just rehydrating this with a wet paintbrush. It is a little more dilute, not quite as opaque as it would be if I'd used some right out of the bottle and diluted it with some water. So I'm going to glue these layers to our A2 card base that is also from the kit. Not going to add any extra layers of dimension behind this paper. I love this paper. It's a taupey neutral with the words happy birthday repeated over and over on it. I used some of the orange cardstock from the kit for this Fluted Classic rectangle die cut. And this is one of the inner simple rectangles from that same die set. Also, no extra dimension behind any of these layers. There's going to be plenty going on. I used my favorite trick to assemble group my ephemera pieces that I want to use together with the press and seal paper. I've added some dimension behind some of those pieces, and I'm going to use this to center it in the card front panels. Now we'll peel off the remaining layers. These will need some dimension added to them also. I'm going to have to add a double layer on some portions and a single layer on others. So we've got a beautiful bouquet, a fun balloon, and a cake with some sparkling candles, a grouping of presents, and a cat with a hat. These are all from the ephemera pack. And to add a little balance to this grouping, I'm adding this piece that has 3 flowers and a leaf. For a sentiment, we're going to take one of the chipboard chipboard stickers from the kit, and we'll adhere that with a little bit of a liquid adhesive glue, and we don't need to add any dimension behind that. Inside, we're going to stamp a happy birthday sentiment from the kit in VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and that's card number 2. For card number 3, we are going to layer up some pieces here. We've got the precision layering A2 die set again, and we'll take 2 of the larger dies from that and die cut a white layer and a layer of the pink confetti paper with that gorgeous foiling. I just love that. And we're going to take a couple of dies from the Forever in Our Memory vignette die set from the Amazing Paper Craze series. This is sized for a 5x7 card, but we're going to use it on our A2 card. We're going to use these 2 smaller dies and die cut that from some shimmery white cardstock. I'm going to die cut those, and here I'm back with all of our die cut pieces. We'll layer our white cardstock onto our A2 sized card base from the card kit. Just going to center that in nicely, and then we will add the foiled piece, the pink pattern paper from the paper pack, and get that nicely centered. And then I'm going to show you how to remove the words from that die cut. We don't necessarily need those. While they are lovely and would work great for a sympathy card, they don't really work for anything but a sympathy card or a memory scrapbook page. So we'll just carefully take our scissors and trim out those words and make this die a lot more versatile. I love the way it frames up the cake from the ephemera pack. It's just the perfect size. I just love it. And actually that whole large die set reminds me of a cloche. You know, the glass dome that you put over a beautiful cake on a cake stand. Love that. I think that's so classy and so fun. And I wanted to add that imagery to this card. Now we're just going to add little dabs of glue behind the fine detail of this second layer of the die set. And we're going to place that on the half dome, on the dome die. There are a bunch of layering dome die sets out there from various companies right now. So I think that's kind of a theme right now. It works great for making little snow globes and that kind of thing also. Now I have added a little bit of dimension behind our cake, just behind the cake and not behind the cake stand. We'll center that towards the top part of the card, and we have this cute little banner with flowers and tassels that I've added a little bit of extra dimension behind. Again, this is with, I think I used coaster blank behind that because we had enough layers with the other things. And next we're going to heat emboss a sentiment for the front of the card. I've taken the happy birthday stamp from the stamp set from the kit, and I've stamped it in some embossing ink, and I'm going to use some gold embossing powder, sprinkle that over our stamped word, and then I'll heat set that until it's shiny and raised. I just love the way heat embossing adds that extra special touch to your card. It adds not only dimension, but some shine and makes it just look that much more professional. I don't know about you, but embossing is what made me fall in love with paper crafting to begin with. It was that wow moment that drew me in. Next, we're going to take a die from the Precision Layering Slimline set, and we're going to use that to die cut around our sentiment. This creates a great sentiment banner. Take a look at your layering dies and see how you can stretch them and use them for your sentiment banners. I know I love to do that. You can do some partial die cutting that really stretches your dies, makes you look at them in a new way, and find ways to create sentiment banners without specific dies for a die set. Now I've taken and die cut that perfectly. I got my sentiment in there just perfect, which doesn't always happen. Let's be honest, sometimes my eyeballing isn't all that fantastic. And then we'll add that to the base of this cake and right above the banner. Now this looked pretty cute just by itself, but I felt it needed just a little more pizzazz. So I took some of the gold foiled ephemera flowers and some of the colorful flower pieces from the ephemera pack, added some dimension behind some of them, tucked under and over, and glued these flowers to the front of the card. I love how that creates a flow across the card. Now, here come the sequins again. I'm going to tell you I use these on every card but card number 2. And I could have gone back and added sequins to card number 2. The gold sequins fit with just about any card, and I love that there are multiple sizes. So we're just going to add those to little dots of glue that I added to our card, and I think they add just the right touch to this card. Inside, we're going to stamp some candles from the kit, and I am doing that in the VersaFine Claire Nocturne ink, which is my favorite ink for sentiments. It usually is on the first try that you get a good inking. These are not the most expensive stamps in the world, but that's okay. They do a good job. Next, I pulled out my distress markers, which honestly haven't seen the light of day in years. Some of them were kind of dry, and I just cheated. I dipped them into my glass of water on my crafting table that I have for watercoloring, and rehydrated them just a little bit, and that's all it took. I have a bunch of candles that match the card. Card number 4, we're going to pull out the Precision Layering die set again and the Fluted Classic Ovals again. These are both getting lots of play in this video, and I have a grouping of ephemera to use again. I die cut the fluted oval from the gold foil cardstock from the set, and I used the the green and white confetti cardstock pattern paper from the kit. And I adhere this to our card base, and I am going to add some layering behind this oval piece after I've finished assembling it. Just going to add a little bit of cardstock. This is a scrap of cardstock from my little scrap area. I have a clear plastic envelope full of scrap white cardstock to add as layering behind different elements, and I'm going to adhere that right in the middle of our card. Next, I have our grouping of ephemera that I've already put one layer of cardstock for dimension behind the very back layer of embellishments. I'm going to carefully peel back my press and seal here and take the other layers. These are all pattern paper weight ephemera except for the Celebrate word. That's one of the cardstock stickers or the chipboard stickers from the set. And I won't need to put as much dimension behind those. I had dry fit all of these and figured out where I needed the extra dimension and added those off screen because I'm pretty sure you don't want to watch me add layers behind all of the ephemera pieces. It does take some time. And this is the chipboard sticker that I did add a little bit of extra dimension on the far left side to make sure it stayed balanced with the layers of the rest of the card. we're going to add one more little piece because I underestimated the amount of dimension I needed. That's what I love about using cardstock, scraps, and coaster blanks to add your dimension, because you can adjust quite easily. Inside the card, no, not inside the card. On the front of the card, we're going to add another sub-sentiment from the stamp set. This stamp set got a lot of play in this video. I used it a lot. I love it when there's a sentiment set included in the die or in the box, because it adds a lot of versatility to the kit. I'm also going to gold heat emboss this, making sure to use my anti-static powder tool, brushing some of that extra away, and stamping it with some clear embossing ink. I did stamp this twice because I wanted to make sure I got a good coverage and a crisp and clear sentiment for the front of this card. We'll just heat set that. I am brushing away any of the extra powder that landed on our card or on our cardstock. We wouldn't want that on our card. And just quickly heat embossing that. Next, I'm going to pull out a die set that came out in the last couple of months. This is called Swallowtail Tags, and it has a hole actually in one end, so you could string this together to create a sentiment banner set, but I am going to cover that hole. I do not have to do any partial die cutting. This die set has several different lengths of the same width of tag, so you just pick the one that fits your sentiment the best. Now we'll take a little bit of coaster blank behind this to add the dimension that we need, and we'll adhere that, tucking the whole end under one of the hats. And I love how that layers in between the two different levels of hats and tucks just perfectly in underneath that word celebrate. This is still a very birthday themed card, and this is the rainbows and confetti and sprinkles sentiment. I think that is just perfect for this stamp set, or excuse me, for this kit. There's so many sprinkles and confetti and rainbow elements in this card. I did take another one of those little banner dies or ephemeras and added that to the inside of the card, which is so fun when you add some of the ephemera to the inside of the card. It really finishes the card off. Lastly, we're going to add some of those sequins, also doing two groupings of 3, one in the right hand lower corner and one in the left upper corner, using my Barely Art Precision Glue to adhere those to the card front to finish this card off. And that will be card number 4. For card number 5, we're going to do some ink blending. I've pulled out some Distress Oxide inks in Scattered Straw and Wild Honey, and I'm going to create a gradient effect across this card. It's going to be a landscape-oriented card, so I've started with the Wild Honey on the long side of the card, and then I come in with the Scattered Straw, and I'm blending those two together and creating a nice blend up the card. Now I do take some of the extra ink on my craft mat, add a little water and spatter it onto our card panel, and that is a 5.5 by 4.25 inch piece of cardstock that I'm going to actually cut down. I'm also going to add some more of the Hero Arts Gold Glimmer ink that I've added to my palette, and added just a smidgen of water to water that down and spatter onto our card base. No, card panel. I'll wait for that to dry, and then I ran it through the Botanical Diamonds embossing folder, which is again the embossing folder of the month. And then I die cut it with a precision layering die, but that smushed my embossing, so I put it back in the embossing folder and re-embossed it. Now we're going to glue this directly to our A2 card base and use a heavyweight block to add a little extra weight to that so it adheres nicely, since it is an embossed panel. Next, we're going to take out one of our groupings of ephemera. This is the candles and flowers, and there's actually a stamp shape with a candle on it. I am going to glue the back layer directly to the card base, And I've added some dimension to some of the other layers. This little leaf has a little bit of layer behind it, and I also curled the tip of the leaf to add a little extra dimension that way. I've already adhered some of the foliage to these large flowers before I added them to the card front. Now we need a sentiment for our card, and again, the stamp set from the kit is going to give us what we need. I am using the Celebrate sentiment and also heat embossing that with gold embossing powder. I love the way this looks. I can't say it enough. The embossing adds so much. We're going to again take one of the precision layering mini slimline dies. I think this is the smallest between the two precision layering slimline die sets. And we're going to do some partial die cutting. I do need this to be a little shorter than the die creates. And this, I had to adjust the placement of my pads. I like to use the tape that I use to secure the die as the marker of where I need the plate to be to end, so that I get only the parts I want cut. And that works perfectly just about every single time. Just want to make sure the die slides into the grooves of the previous die cutting, so you get no offsetting on your die. Then we just adhere that to the front of our card. And I'm going to add the little extra heavyweightness on there again. We're going to use the Sending Birthday Hugs stamp from the stamp set from the kit again inside the card. And I'm going to add a little bit more ephemera to the inside of the card also. I love how that really finishes off the look of your card. I can't seem to match the colors for the ephemera perfectly anytime. I get close, but never perfect. That's why adding ephemera to the inside of your card really completes the look of your card. Next, we're going to pull out those sequins again. Just going to add little dots of glue where I think I want our sequins. And I had realized at this point that I was being very repetitive in my placement of the sequins. Sometimes you just got to shake it up and throw in a different pattern, or not think too hard about it. If you just add little dabs of glue randomly around to add your embellishments, it will go faster, and you actually will find that it is satisfying and pretty, even if you aren't thinking a ton. Occasionally you'll have to edit your placement, but it isn't too bad. We'll add one more sequin right here. Actually, I think about adding more and change my mind and stick with that. For card number 6, we're going to take the Radiant Burst embossing folder from April 2022, and we're going to use the precision layering die and die cut a piece of white cardstock and do some partial embossing. We're going to put the embossing folder in the die cutting machine and only put the plate over the part that we want to emboss. And then we are going to take some Distress Oxide. These brushes just have leftover ink on them, so it's a yellow, and I take a little bit of orange and I ink blend with that. And that is too orangey, and I want it to be a little more pink to match the colors on our ephemera. So I bring in a pink blending brush and add that to get the colors that I want. Now I'm also going to add more of that gold glimmer paint from Hero Arts. I'm just going to add a little more water to that to rehydrate it and spatter that on our panel. And since I die cut this panel and the piece of pattern paper with the precision layering die, I have those line up just perfect. I love that about the precision layering dies. It makes layering your pattern papers and your cardstocks together so much easier. So you don't have to do any of that extra trimming. Now we'll add a little bit of cardstock behind that panel with the embossing. We have a little bit of warping, and this will just make things lay more nicely on our card base. We'll adhere that directly to our A2 card base, making sure we line that up properly, and you can see how nicely that's coming together already. We have our grouping of ephemera. We've got this large image of candles, this cute little border banner either way. To me, it looks like edging on a cake or on a tablecloth. So we'll just add that to the border between the pattern paper and the cardstock. We have a little bit of dimension behind our candles. I used coaster blank behind that pink scalloped border and just cardstock behind the candles so that they'll tuck under the upper edge. The sentiment is actually a chipboard sticker, and I've added a little bit of dimension behind the top half of that so it nestles in here just perfectly. I do have to trim a little bit of that since it was sticking out from behind our cardstock sticker. Then I'm going to add some of these stars that came in the ephemera kit. Just going to add those in kind of a triangular presentation so that they create a nice visual flow through our card. Adding visual triangles is a big key to design theory. It really helps keep the design balanced and carries your eye across the entire design. We're going to add these sequins again. Now, my little pickup stick here was getting a little not so sticky. So I took my X-Acto knife and scraped off some of the wax that probably had some adhesive stuck to it, and it's nice and picky-uppy again. I do like to use the other end of my pickup stick to add a little pressure to our sequins and push them down into the glue, and that seems to work great and avoids me getting the sequins stuck to my fingers and for me getting more glue on my fingers. I get a lot of glue on my fingers, and I think I went overboard on the sequins on this one. I keep adding more because it just felt unbalanced. Sometimes you just have to keep adding elements until it feels right. And sometimes you just have to say, enough is enough. Is there ever enough? Apparently, that's what I thought was the right amount. We're going to take a sentiment from the stamp set again and stamp that on the inside of the card. And that pretty much completes this card. Oh, I almost forgot. We added some stars to the inside. I think I have started to do more of the ephemera additions to the insides of our cards just because it's so much easier and it creates that beautiful balance between the front and the inside of the card. I do decide to do 3 of the stars, and I lined them up underneath the sentiment to add a nice little landing spot for the sentiment inside our card. For card number 7, I am using the ephemera to pick my colors again, and I have scattered straw, and I start out with worn lipstick but changed my mind to Kitsch Flamingo. The worn lipstick matched one of the butterflies, but the Kitsch Flamingo matches more of the elements of this card, so that's what we're going to use. I'm starting out with the Kitsch Flamingo on the long side of this card piece, which is again 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I will cut this down to fit the card. We're ink blending the scattered straw and the Kitsch Flamingo together, and they do create a nice little color in between. They blend actually quite nicely. We're also going to add some gold spatter to this because why not? There is lots of gold foiling in the... No, there isn't gold spatter. I just used some water to spatter on this. Then I'm taking an embossing folder that came out a couple of months ago. This was called This Plus This, and it's got plus signs all over it. And we're going to use the large die of the month for June 2020 called Paisley Dreams. It's got this large Paisley piece that you can layer extra pieces onto, but we're just going to use this piece to highlight our ephemera grouping. We also die cut the Hello from gold foil cardstock. The Paisley piece was cut from some shimmery white cardstock. We'll adhere our ink blended and spattered panel to our card base after I used a precision layering die to cut that down to the size I wanted. We'll adhere this shimmery white die cut directly to the card panel. I do use that heavyweight block to add a little extra weight to make sure it adheres very well on our cardstock base. I have probably mentioned it before, but the shimmery white cardstock really likes glue and adheres quite quickly. However, with the embossing, it needs a little extra help. I'm going to take our gold foil sentiment and add some dots of the Barely Art Precision Glue behind that. I like that this sentiment has some big loopy, wider pieces that take to our gluing very nicely. I'm going to take this peace sign embellishment and add a little dimension behind that with some cardstock. And I'm peeling off all of the other embellishments or ephemera, and I'm going to place them roughly back where I had them on the press and seal paper. We're playing with the little asterisk or star-shaped, sparkle-shaped pieces and adding those scattered around our grouping. And the butterflies are adhered with some cardstock dimension behind them also. They add such a fun and very hippie feeling to this card. I have been accused of being a very granola person at work on occasion, but I am really drawn to free spirit type of things, and that kind of goes with the artistic personality, I guess. And then on the inside, we're going to switch to the clear stamp and die set of the month. Actually, I'm just using the stamp set from this grouping. We're going to stamp sending happy thoughts your way to the inside, and again bringing some of these sparkle ephemera pieces to the inside of the card. That way we get our gold foiling and it matches the front of our card perfectly. Love that. We're going to add some gold sequins to the card, just adding some of them tucked underneath the butterflies. I love that look where you have them partially under another element. And that is card number 7. Card number 8, that design morphed as we went. I am using the precision layering dies and the fluted classic rectangles. And I originally started with a larger fluted rectangle, then decided it was covering too much of that fantastic pattern paper and took the smaller rectangle of the fluted classics and die cut that with some white paper. I had tried with the vellum, but decided I did not like that. It didn't create enough of a difference between the pattern paper and our ephemera. So I adhere the pattern paper directly to our A2 card base, and I am going to add the fluted classic rectangle die cut directly into the center of the cardstock. I really wanted to show off that fun pattern paper with all of our dancing people, rainbows, and balloons. It looks very birthday. Well, it looks like it could be birthday, but it could be all kinds of things, anything to do with happiness and celebration. We have our 3 ladies here, and I did add a little bit of cardstock pieces behind that for some extra dimension. We'll start with our widest, tallest person and center that person, usually using the foot and the center of the upraised arms to center the person in the middle of that panel. And then we'll add our other 2 people, one on each side, trying to get the foot and the hand to play well together. I can't decide between the foot being on top or the hand being on top. Either way, it will look cute. I do think that the foot over the hand is better because the centerpiece is generally the more raised piece. Next, we're going to take this chipboard sticker and add a little bit of coaster blank behind it to add a little more dimension behind it, and then we'll adhere that to the card's front directly under our rectangular panel, just adding that extra height so that it's even with the rest of the pieces. I think I got the coaster blank just a little too far down at one point, and I had to nudge that back into place. We're also going to take a sentiment from the Paisley Bouquet again. This has a coordinating die. It's the Hello stamp with a coordinating die. We're going to gold heat emboss that again, just using some clear embossing ink, making sure to use our anti-static powder tool, which for me is just an old sock, not too terribly old because it still looks pretty good, and putting some cornstarch in it, stitching 3 of the sides and leaving one end open so I can refill it as needed. I don't know about you, but baby powder is what most of the talcum powder, baby powder, that sets off my asthma, so I can't use it. So I had to come up with my own solution. Turns out it's way more affordable. We're die cutting our sentiment word out of this die, or with this die, and then I'm also cutting another layer of white cardstock to layer right behind it. Sometimes it's nice to use the same exact size. That being said, I'm only going to use part of that white die cut that I created. I'm going to cut off the beginning and the end of our word and place that right in the middle, because we're going to glue this between the first and the second people on the front of this card. Just gonna add a little glue to the dimensional portion and to the front and the back of that sentiment and tuck that in and create our card front. I do need to use an eraser to get some of the extra adhesive that was stuck to the front of our lady. Again, going to use a sentiment from the clear stamp and die set of the month. And I think that goes perfect with this whole feel of this card. This is just a general, send it to anyone for any reason kind of card. We're going to add a few more of these sequins, going back to my pattern of 3 in the upper left and 3 in the lower right. It works. Why change, right? And that is card number 8. Card number 9 is going to be a very sunshiny card. We're going to use the Stylized Border Trio, which is the small die of the month for June 2022. And we're going to take one of the wider border dies to create this gold foil border that will layer over the pattern paper and this linen texture paper that I'm going to use. I did die cut both a piece of, not both, all of these pieces with a precision layering die, and I am layering the pattern paper down onto this background piece. It's just a scrap piece, and this is a textured piece of white cardstock. I'm figuring out where I want these two to overlap based on the size of the grouping of ephemera, and I'll go to my paper trimmer and trim down this textured cardstock piece to the size that I want, and we'll glue that on top of this whole panel. I do like having a piece of paper that is not actually part of the design to glue these pieces together so that I get the size just right. And apparently I glued it on there just a little wrong. So I trim off the extra. Now I'm going to add this beautiful lacy border, and because it's such a delicate die cut, I'm using my favorite method for this, which is to put a little bit of liquid glue on the back of my hand and then dab the die cut into the glue. This doesn't give it too much glue, and it doesn't take so long that part of it dries before you even get it adhered to your card front. Just carefully centering that on this panel, and I'm going to leave the edges untrimmed until the very last part of this card. Since it is that gold foil, I do use a heavy block to help add a little extra weight to it to get it to adhere nicely. And we're going to glue this to our A2 size card front. Just going to center that nicely, add our glue to the back, and that will get our card probably about a third done. And next we are going to get out our ephemera, and I do add a little bit of coaster blank to part of these and a little bit of paper cardstock scraps to this. And again, I'm just dry fitting this onto the card. I love how that little sun centers in that rosette, or however you want to call that. It's this beautiful burst of foiling and different colors of ink. And I think it goes beautifully with so many of our circular different elements in this ephemera pack. I tucked the bouquet of balloons behind our incredibly fancy sun, and we're adding our sunglasses, which is perfect, and a little 80s mix cassette tape on here. It's got kind of a mix of modern and vintage feel to this. I also have a sentiment from the chipboard stickers. We're adding a little bit of coaster blank behind that to add some dimension. We'll add that to the side here. I think this would be super fun for any age group, mostly for girls, since it says B-Day Girl in the sunglasses. And now we'll trim off our gold detailed die. Next, we'll add some sequins. I like to tuck those under some of the ephemera pieces. And then we're going to add a sentiment to the inside of the card, again from the stamp set that came with the kit. And there it is, card number 9. And here we are at card number 10. We are going to do a little more ink blending here. I have spiced marmalade and worn lipstick, and we're going to do a portrait style card this time. We'll start with the worn lipstick at the bottom, and we'll get a nice heavy layer of that put down, and then we'll move on to the spiced marmalade and get that blended in. That creates a lovely blend. I've really been enjoying adding ink blending to my 10 cards 1 kit card videos because it's so much fun to add that piece. I love to do backgrounds. I love to add extra to my cards, and this really helps me make it my design. I've taken the precision layering die sets and I've die cut this black and white rainbow with pink hearts pattern paper, one of my favorite pattern papers from this pad, and I've die cut that and our ink blended piece to create these layers for our ephemera grouping. We're going to adhere those to the A2 card base, and I've used all of the card bases in this card kit, but I tell you, I could make so many more cards with this, so many more. I have actually so many ideas more. I don't think I'm going to have time to do another video featuring all of those cards that are in my brain, but not done on paper yet. Yet again, I am layering these all up using cardstock as an extra layer of dimension for some of these layers and maybe some coaster blank for some of the others. I had already planned out my placement of these with the press and seal holding it all together. I highly recommend that when you start looking for ideas for when you're looking through your ephemera, to start grouping them together into groupings that you think would look awesome. This cupcake is a chipboard sticker. Again, did need a little extra dimension behind that. And I love that ice cream cone with the rainbow and the strawberry. I think that's my favorite cardstock or ephemera piece from this. I do have a scrap of the ink blended piece here, and I'm going to heat emboss a sentiment on that, just using some clear embossing ink and a sentiment from the stamp set from this kit, and we'll get the happy birthday all lined up. I think this is a perfect sentiment for this card. I apologize if you hear a dog barking. I live in the country. My dog is outside. She loves to bark at the squirrels and the birds and the bears and all the things. She's been silent this whole morning. Now, towards the end of my video. All right, sorry, back to my video. This is a Slimline precision layering die set. I've taken one of the smallest dies to create a sentiment banner yet again, and doing some partial die cutting to give us the perfect size banner behind our sentiment. I love how that turned out. Perfectly matches the other ink blending on the card. We're going to add a piece of coaster blank behind that to add the right amount of dimension and set that right under our cupcake like it's sitting on top of it and grounding the whole ephemera grouping. Next, we'll add the sentiment to the inside of the card. And I don't know about you, but I sometimes have to turn my MISTI so that my words will go in the right direction, because I have stamped them in a landscape orientation on a card that is portrait, or vice versa, and not realized it until I'd finished it. Actually, you've probably seen me do it if you've watched any of my other card making videos. We're going to also add a couple pieces of ephemera to the inside of the card. We've got this postage stamp with the ice cream cone with the rainbow and the strawberry. Told you I love that image. And we're adding a couple of these sparkle ephemera to the inside. I'm just going to use my little pickup stick to get those placed exactly where I want. Add a dot of glue behind each of these pieces of ephemera. And then I go to try to pick up our postage stamp and realize, I already glued it down. Our last piece for this card, we are going to add some more of the sequins. I am just placing them around, resisting the urge to do just our grouping of 3 up and down, but that's what I ultimately do. It works. And that is all 10 of the cards for this video. I had a request from a viewer to have a couple of screenshotable pieces here with 5 cards each, and that's what we have. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't done that, and check out that description box below for all of the supplies that I used today. Until next time, here are a couple of videos I thought you might enjoy. Bye-bye.